me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Good evening, welcome to Patrick Christys Tonight. Don't get sick.
We've been working day and night, 24 hours.
Yeah, the privately educated militant junior doctors union leader swanned off on holiday during the last round of strikes. Now he's out on the picket lines as millions are set to suffer this Christmas. Do you know who this woman is? That is England Lioness goalie Mary Earps. Controversially winning Sports Personality of the Year. Is this yet more tokenism? England's greatest goalie, Peter Shilton, kicks off on that. Who's on the naughty list? Yeah, that's right. Jeffrey Epstein's little black book is going to be revealed. What does this mean for Prince Andrew and co? I've got the lawyer who's represented 8 of Epstein's victims on, and the journalist who led the charge against Ghislaine Maxwell. Oh, and then there's this guy.
If you want to go to war with me, you really can.
Yes, Nigel Farage is on to discuss whether asylum seekers should get an allowance of around £1.25 a day. On my panel, we've got Christine Hamilton, Adam Brooks and Benjamin Butterworth. It's going to get lively. This is Patrick Christys Tonight. Here we go. All right, email me now. Junior doctors, should they get back to work? GBviews at gbnews.com. I'll see you after the headlines.
Patrick, thank you, and good evening to you. Well, the top story from the GB Newsroom tonight. The mother of the murdered teenager, Brianna Ghey, says her daughter's 2 killers have not yet shown an ounce of remorse after being found guilty of her daughter's murder. In February, Brianna was found with fatal stab wounds in a park in Cheshire. The pair, identified only as Girl X and Boy Y, both now aged 16 but 15 years old at the time, denied murder and blamed each other for the killing. In other news today, the head of Scotland's water industry regulator has quit after a watchdog disclosed unacceptable spending of public cash on expenses, including a £77,000 Harvard course for a senior manager. The watchdog found the Water Industry Commission for Scotland failed to seek government approval for 2 purchases over the last 2 years. One of those was the provision of £100 gift vouchers for staff as a Christmas present, which exceeded the £75 limit for gifts. The Scottish Government says the actions are completely unacceptable. The Chancellor says inflation fell to 3.9% due to difficult decisions taken by the government a year ago. Newly released ONS figures show UK inflation fell from 4.6% in October. It's still well above the Bank of England's goal of 2%, but the ONS says a decrease in fuel prices was the biggest reason for the fall, and food prices are also rising, but more slowly. UK house prices have seen their biggest annual fall for more than a decade. According to the Office for National Statistics, values fell by an average of 1.2% over 12 months to October. That's the biggest annual decrease since the year before. The average UK home is now valued at £288,000. That's down an average of £3,000. Higher borrowing costs are being blamed for the decline. West Lindsey District Council is appealing against a High Court decision allowing the Home Office to house illegal migrants on RAF Scampton. The former airbase near Lincoln is currently earmarked to accommodate 2,000 single adult male illegal migrants. Councillors voted unanimously to bring the action, saying the site, which was once home to the dam busters, is not suitable. RAF Scampton had previously been earmarked for a landmark £300 million investment plan. Prince Andrew's connection with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein is set for further scrutiny with the release of hundreds of new files. US Judge Loretta Preska ruled that documents relating to more than 170 associates, friends and victims of Epstein should be made public. They include 40 pieces of evidence from Johanna Sjoberg, who claimed that the Duke of York touched her inappropriately while sitting next to her inside Epstein's Manhattan apartment in 2001. Buckingham Palace has previously claimed the allegations are categorically untrue. On TV, online, DAB+ radio and the TuneIn app, this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I've got to start the show with an urgent warning. Don't you dare get sick for a week. That's because militant junior doctors have gone on strike and they're gloating about it. A chap called Dr Lawson Hughes, a first-year junior doctor in Yorkshire, tweeted that he was now off until after Christmas and God bless the BMA. People are dying, Doctor. While you tuck into your Christmas turkey, more people will possibly die. He has since clarified his comments and said that consultants will keep patients safe for him. Charming. These strikes are political. The junior doctors want a 35% pay rise. They were happy to accept a pay rise of around 12.4% from the woke SNP government. But here in England, under a Conservative government, they rejected a pay rise worth 3% on top of the average 8.8% increase thousands pocketed this summer. Here's what the co-chair of the BMA's Junior Doctor Committee had to say earlier. Dr Robert Lawrence.
Patients are suffering all year round, and every winter we hear the same horror stories coming out time and time again. And the fact of the matter is the government has done nothing for the last 15 years to solve those winter crises. They seem to think that cutting our pay is going to make things better.
Well, here's what Victoria Atkins, Secretary of State for Health and Social Care, said in response.
Our NHS should be there for all of us when we need it. And what I'm worried about with this strike action, as we've seen in previous strike actions, we will have appointments cancelled. There have been more than 1 million appointments cancelled since industrial action started last year. I want us to reach fair and reasonable settlements, and I've managed to do that with consultants and with specialised doctors. I want to do the same with junior doctors, but them calling a strike and walking out of negotiations is not the way to secure.
But you might remember Dr Lawrence, because Here he is earlier on, OK? He's talking about work ethic.
We've been working day and night, 24 hours, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year.
Those words have come straight out of the back end of a cow. Dr Lawrenson rabble-roused junior doctors into striking earlier this year, then disappeared on holiday. We here at GB News managed to obtain a secret picture of Dr Dolittle enjoying the sun. Yeah, OK, all right, that may not be real. But what is real is the lack of holidays for the millions of people crippled by cancelled appointments. Now, this hard-up junior doctor, who can barely afford a Tesco meal deal, reportedly bought a £484,000 London property without a mortgage. He is reportedly a director of a multi-million-pound investment firm as well, and went to one of the most prestigious boarding schools in the country, Sevenoaks, which charges fees of up to £46,500 a year for some students. GB News managed to obtain another undercover picture of Dr Lawrenson, just chilling at his home. Ah, there we go. Look, obviously, again, that's a joke. In reality, he's, of course, burning money to keep warm these days. It's an absolute classic. Look, we need junior doctors, all joking aside now, OK? We need junior doctors, and they should be fairly paid. I think they should get a pay rise, a bit of one, not least because we are losing loads of our top medical talent to Australia and other nations because they get paid more there and they have a better work-life balance. We have to, as a country, respond to market forces. We can't be losing our best to other nations, but it is a question of what is fair for everyone. And the NHS bigwigs have to explain why people like diversity managers can earn 3, 4 or 5 times what a junior doctor earns, and maybe these junior doctors on the picket lines should turn their fury on their own bosses as well, people in charge of egregious NHS waste, instead of ordinary vulnerable members of the public to score political points against what they view as a toxic Tory government. Is it fair that as many as 2 million outpatient appointments and operations have been cancelled as a result of NHS strikes already this year? Is it fair that the A&E department at Cheltenham General Hospital has closed until 8 a.m. on Saturday as a result of this? Is it fair that elderly people will stay in their own homes this Christmas because they're afraid of getting ill and not receiving care? No, it isn't fair. And some of those militant junior doctors out on strike have been qualified for less than a year. They are striking, and people who have worked all their lives, paid taxes all their lives, paid for the NHS all their lives, are the ones paying the price now, and I don't think that's fair. But let's get the thoughts now of my panel. Author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton joins us, businessman and activist Adam Brooks, and journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth. Christine, I'll start with you. Should the junior doctors get back to work?
Of course they should. It's absolutely grotesque what they're doing. Their motto is put patients first. Well, pull the other one. They claim that they're doing this to save the NHS. I mean, the insufferable arrogance of people like whatever his name is. That was a bit unfair, by the way, putting that picture of him.
It's a joke. It's a joke.
But bit of it. It is absolutely ludicrous. It is grossly political. The BMA are not a union. They're a sort of they're a political sort of semi-Marxist organisation. It stands for bloody-minded activists, frankly, the BMA. What should happen is, the trouble is that the salary negotiations should not be done nationally. Right. Each hospital should be individually funded. Each hospital should be able to do their own negotiations. The fault lies with the structure of the NHS. But no, they should get back to work. People will die.
Adam, is it immoral?
And they should care about that.
All right. It is immoral, and it's pure greed. They're being offered above inflation pay rises. There are millions in this country that haven't had pay rises for years. There are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of self-employed that are still paying off COVID loans and losses, like myself, over the last 3 or 4 years. Now, they must put patients first. It's going to cost lives. These unions, as Christine said, are full of Marxists and anti-Tory activists.
It isn't pure greed, it's greed and politics.
There's going to be A&E departments that are going to be shut because of this. It's a disgrace.
Benjamin, you're chuckling away there. People are dying.
Yeah, I'm just amused at the idea that all our doctors are closet Marxists. You know, I've got a feeling that these
Not
people...
all. The BMA are.
I've got a feeling that these people... You flagged that BMA boss went to a private school. I'm amazed to see you criticising private schools. What a transformation attitude that is. The fact is that, you know, junior doctors and doctors in general, medical staff in general, have had a serious pay cut over the last 13 years. That means that their hours have got longer, the quality of our hospitals have got worse, and their remuneration for their hard work, and it's incredible hard work, not just when they're out there in hospitals helping people, but the many years of training, a lot longer than 7 for a lot of these doctors. They work incredibly hard, and they should be paid better. And one of the key problems we have is that we're losing our doctors to countries like Australia, to Canada. And why are they going? They're going because they're not paid properly.
No, they're going partly because they're allowed to implement the kind of system that a lot of militant doctors and union barons will not allow us to enforce in this country, and have not allowed us to enforce in this country for years. And so you can end up with a system over there that means that you can pay people higher wages, you can have a better quality of healthcare and a better work-life balance, in my view.
What is odd is that why don't we get these strikes in the private sector? We don't, do we? It's always in the public sector, which indicates to me that they are politically motivated, especially now.
Can I just point out that in the last couple of years, private sector salaries have risen much faster than public sector salaries. The average was double in the last 12 months.
Can I just remind you the sort of pensions that these people get that people in the private sector do not get?
Well, if you're 40 or 50, you'll still be on a good pension scheme. But let me tell you, people joining public service jobs who are around my age or 10 years younger, they get terrible pensions compared with their parents, compared with someone of your age that went into the public sector.
I think it's time to ban striking for anyone that protects, serves or treats the public, because lives are going to be lost. And it's funny, during COVID, the same sort of people were wear a mask if it saves one life. Yet what they're going to do here over the next few days are going to cost hundreds, if not thousands, of lives. And no one wants to talk about it.
What I find peculiarly horrendous about this particular strike is the timing. Why do it over Christmas and the New Year?
Maximum damage.
Maximum damage, which it all goes back to my view and your view that they are politically motivated strikes because they're understaffed at Christmas anyway. There's a lot of pressure at this time of the year.
Right.
It is deliberately designed to cause maximum damage.
Benjamin, would you give them a 35% pay rise? Because that's what they're after.
Well, if they got that pay rise, and you call it a pay rise, it would actually just put them on the same pay that they were when the Labour government left office, right?
Not quite true, is it?
Well, it is. That's what if they had inflationary rises equivalent.
On RPI, and I think that's been debunked anyway, that 35% figure.
Look, would you give it to them? Well, I think 35% in one go is clearly not plausible.
Right, so let's put a number on it.
do not back that either.
Let's put a number on it because, look, you know, obviously I was, you know, poking a bit of fun at Dr. Robert Lawrence in there and all of that stuff. But, you know, there is a serious point here. I don't want us to be in a situation where we have an epic industrial-scale brain drain to other countries, which is happening, right? I don't want us to be in that situation. There is going to have to be some wiggle room here. They've accepted something like a 12.4% pay rise up in Scotland. They've knocked back something that would equate to about that in the UK, in England, which I do think does lend itself to thinking that maybe it is political, but there we go. What percentage pay rise would you give them?
Well, clearly I'm not going to pretend to negotiate on behalf of junior doctors on your sofa. But look, I think that doctors at the bottom of the scale should get a bigger pay rise than those at the top. Right. Because the amount of money that they're earning when they come out, you know, you can start at like 30k, and that's not a lot of money for someone that spent years of training. And it's certainly in places like the South East or London wouldn't go far enough.
40k, 50k, what are we talking? Go on.
Well, I'm not going to play your game. It's not, you know, it's not deal or no deal.
One of the problems is that the word, or the two words, junior doctor, covers such a range of experience and time, etc., etc. So it's very, very misleading. And all these figures that are quoted, is it somebody who's had a year? Is it somebody who's had 8 years' experience? Unless you're a consultant, you're a junior doctor. So I think it's very, very confusing.
We talk about these people as though they owe us their time, as though they owe us their incredible self-discipline. They don't. They're there to be paid properly for their incredible talent.
Anymore.
OK, all right. We're going to draw a line under it. We're going to draw a line under it.
Turn that job around and say pay them minimum wage.
The emails have been flooding in on this, a heck of a lot. gbviews@gbnews.com. Sorry, Patrick, but whilst you're dissing them, please tell MPs not to accept a pay rise either, because I know which one I'd give it to. That's from Carol. Fair enough, Carol. Keep your views coming in. Massively strong views on either side of this, either side of it. I'll keep going to those throughout the show. Still to come, though, should asylum seekers be made to survive on £1.25 a day? Is it time we got tough to deter new visitors to Hotel Britain? Our very own Nigel Farage, the true king of the jungle, returns to weigh in on that, and Donald Trump being removed from the ballot in Colorado. How will he survive? But up next, in the head-to-head, Joey Barton has lashed out and says that we live in a culture of snowflakes. Did Lioness goalkeeper Mary Earps deserve to win Sports Personality of the Year, or is this yet more tokenism? Legendary England goalkeeper Peter Shilton, Anna May Mangan and Peter Lloyd are going to go head-to-head. That's live next. But before that, we, of course, have 3 amazing prizes that are guaranteed to be won by one lucky viewer in our Great British Giveaway. 10 grand in cash, tech and vouchers. And if you haven't entered yet, why not? It's so easy. Here's how.
This is your chance to win 3 amazing prizes that will get your new year off to a great start. First, there's a terrific £10,000 in cash to be won. Imagine what you can do with that. We'll also give you a tech update with the very latest iPhone 15 Pro Max. Plus £500 worth of shopping vouchers to spend in your favourite store. The retail therapy could be on us. For another chance to win the iPhone, the vouchers and £10,000 cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB01, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday, the 5th of January. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Good luck.
Come on then, you lucky people. But up next, Peter Shilton takes on Anna May Mangan and Peter Lloyd on Mary Earps winning Sports Personality of the Year. Is this just tokenism?
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christys Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Well, GB News presenter and I'm a Celebrity superstar Nigel Farage joins me live next. But first, it's time for the head-to-head. So, the great and the good of the sporting world gathered for the Sports Personality of the Year Awards last night, and it was England women's goalkeeper Mary Earps who became the third woman in 3 years to scoop the Personality of the Year gong, ahead of England cricketing hero Stuart Broad. But it wasn't long before fans were questioning Earps' eligibility, given that her greatest sporting achievement this year was a dismal 1-0 loss to Spain in the World Cup final. Indeed, legendary ex-football player Joey Barton, who else, weighed in on the controversy today, slamming the awards for honouring someone that hasn't won a sausage, his words, and continuing, to win before Ronnie O'Sullivan and Frankie Dettori, well, that's just madness to me. Both almost genius-like in their respective fields. That's the world we live in. So tonight I am asking, was Earps a worthy winner of Sports Personality of the Year, or has she been rewarded for failure? Let me know your thoughts. Email now, gbviews@gbnews.com. Tweet me at gbnews, and while you're there, make sure you go and vote in our poll. I'll bring you the results very shortly. But to debate this, I'm joined by England's greatest ever goalkeeper, Peter Shilton, broadcaster Anna May Mangan, and author and journalist Peter Lloyd. Thank you very much for a bumper edition of the head-to-head. Peter, I've got to start with you. Do you think that she's a worthy winner of Sports Personality of the Year, or is this tokenism?
No, she got the most votes, and that's what it's all about. You know, the public voted for her, and at the end of the day, you know, I think women's football in the last 2 or 3 years has come on leaps and bounds, but the goalkeeping position was always very weak to me, the weakest part of the women's game. And I think Mary's done a lot to elevate that. You know, I like her style. She shouts at her defence, you know, she encourages people, she gives a few rollickings, she shows a lot of passion. And I think, you know, that is a big part of goalkeeping to me. And, yeah, you know, obviously, I think Andrew Pearce said this morning on his show, you know, that she hasn't won anything, but at the end of the day, you know, the public felt that she was the best choice.
All right, I'm going to go to the other Peter now, Peter Lloyd. Well, what do you think? Is this just outrageous tokenism?
Yeah, I think it is. And I actually think Peter is wrong on that, because he's always quite naive to believe that the BBC is going to be really transparent and not be doing some kind of jiggery-pokery behind the scenes in order to engineer their own outcome, which I suspect is probably what happened. All the people behind Sports Personality of the Year all have an agenda to promote women's football. This was a foregone conclusion. I say, leak the data. Show us who voted in what numbers.
OK, Anna May Mangan now, it's your turn. You look at the likes of Stuart Broad, who's an absolute titan, Ronnie O'Sullivan, for goodness sake. I mean, these are people that have really won things and really, you know, set records, etc. I mean, Mary Earps isn't in that league, is she?
Who did the public vote for? They voted for Mary, Queen of Stops, as she's known. She's an inspiration. And I'll tell you something, Joey Barton is such a has-been that the kids I know who love football all know who Mary Earp is. None of them have got a clue who Joey Barton is. So what does anyone care what he says? He's so offensive And he's forgetting that women's football is so popular now among boys and girls and adults, and she's a really worthy winner. People have dissed her so much. After the World Cup final, admittedly they didn't win, but what an achievement to get there. They didn't even make a shirt for her. And when after lobbying they did make her a shirt, it sold out in 5 minutes. So for God's sake, let's give her credit where credit's due. She's popular, she's brilliant, she's inspirational. Go, Mary.
All right, Peter Shilton, I mean, she would never go into any men's team you played in, would she?
No, definitely
joking,
not.
aren't you?
But there's a big difference between the man's game and the woman's game. Nobody's denying that. But at the same time, the women's game has come a long way. You know, I don't think we can start accusing the BBC of cheating. I think that would be quite
really?
bad, really. I think that
really you don't think we can accuse the BBC of cheating? This is the same organisation.
Right, okay.
This is the same organisation that wouldn't call Hamas a terrorist organisation, and it allowed Gary Lineker to breach impartiality rules all the time. They cannot be trusted.
No.
So we're shouting.
Anna, all right, stop, all of you. Anna, I'll go to you now. Go on.
Yeah, I'm saying, so we're shouting cheat now because a woman has quite rightly won an award. I mean, Joey Barton hasn't even got a job, so why is he criticising somebody who has?
All right, Peter Lloyd, come back to that, because obviously you've made some strong allegations there about the BBC and so. I mean, you know, is this just the fact that maybe blokes now can't tolerate a female winner?
100%.
No. I think it's just because you've got a lot of feminist activists, a lot of man-hating feminists at the BBC who are really desperate to push this women's football thing. And it's not really about football. It's about invading male space. They hate that men are worshipped in football. They hate that. It's cultural envy gone nuts. This is their reparations.
All right, Peter Shilton, I'm trying to think about some of the historic Sports Personality of the Year winners. I think the year David Beckham won it, I don't think he won anything, certainly at an international level. Michael Owens won it. He didn't win anything in an international level either. So I suppose there is form for this, isn't there, Peter Shilton?
Yeah, there's form. Yeah, of course there is. And it's a public vote, and that's what it's supposed to be anyway. Beth Mead won it last year. Because obviously she was involved in the England team that won the Euros, you know. So women's football is on the up. You know, there's a big, massive support out there for it for many ways, really. I think it's because, you know, they see, you know, it's a lot cleaner than English football. There's not quite as much, you know, shouting at the referees, although it is coming into the women's game because the pressure of winning getting greater. But I think overall, yeah, I think the public obviously love the women's game, and their public has grown.
Anna, can I just ask you on this one? Do you think that the women's game has been quite forced onto people, massively over-promoted? We've had female footballers operating as pundits in the male game, and you don't see that reciprocated that much the other way round. You know, is there not a big woke diversity agenda when it comes to pumping out the women's game to us?
Well, when I go to Wembley to watch the women's team play, it's a very big crowd there, no free tickets, and everyone's cheering along, so no. And this win for her is not just about her achievements. Yeah, sure, they didn't win the World Cup final, but I don't remember the men's team being in the World Cup final any time recently. And not only that, it's about her personality as well. People warm to that. And it's about the whole zeitgeist of a new game. So, yeah, I just think the other Peter Lloyd, is it? Sorry, I don't know what you're saying. I think what you said about men owning football, you're a dinosaur.
Peter Lloyd, final word to you. Are you a dinosaur? Do you think that we'll ever see another straight white male winner of Sports Personality of the Year again?
No, of course not, because hateful people like Anna or these man-hating feminists, they won't allow it. Oh, and by the way, Anna, you're the eldest on the panel, so maybe you're the dinosaur.
Not my thinking is not as old as yours, so that's interesting, isn't it? How you could be younger and still so old-fashioned.
OK, a good time to draw a line under things. Thank you very much, everybody. A mega head-to-head there, and I'm quite glad that I didn't have to break up a fist fight in the studio. So, who do you agree with as Joey Barton lashes out and says, we live in a culture of snowflakes? Did Mary Earps deserve to win Sports Personality of the Year? Simon on Twitter says absolutely not. The shortlist for this award was appalling. There are far more people who deserved it. Tom on Twitter says, obviously, yes, because more people voted for her than anyone else. Tom, I'll be honest with you, I mean, that is the best argument to that, isn't it? It was a public vote, and she won the public vote. So, you know, there is that. Mike on Twitter says, since when did we become a nation that rewards losers when we have plenty of winners that don't win awards? Well, there you go. I suppose I'm a loser and I've not won an award either, so there we go. Your verdict is now in. 23% of you agree that she deserved to win, while 77% of you say that she did not. So the people have spoken, although not the ones who voted for her. Coming up, some celebs will be sweating this Christmas, with Jeffrey Epstein's little black book due to be revealed in the new year. The lawyer who's represented 8 of Epstein's victims, Eric Fidali, and the top investigative journalist Vicky Ward, who led the charge against Ghislaine Maxwell, they are going to be on this show to give their expert insight. But first, should asylum seekers get an allowance of just £1.25 a day? Is it time we made Britain even less attractive to the schools of migrants on the continent? Our very own Nigel Farage, the true king of the jungle, returns to our show to react to that and Donald Trump being declared ineligible to run for US president by a Colorado court. Don't miss him.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christys Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now, with the cost of housing migrants rocketing to an eye-watering £8 million a day, the government has slashed the daily allowance for asylum seekers to £1.25, a move that refugee charities have described as unfathomable, with warnings that it could leave migrants destitute. Well, I'm joined now by GB News star Nigel Farage. Nigel, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. Look, should they be getting any allowance at all?
Well, look, they're getting accommodation, they're getting 3 square meals a day, they're getting free dentistry, something very few Brits can get these days on the NHS. They're getting medical treatment. Many of them have turned up without passports. They've travelled through illegal trafficking gangs. Why should we give them fag money on top?
OK, and what would you say to refugee charities who claim this will leave them destitute?
Well, I mean, if they're to come to Britain and to be accepted through a legal process as people who have got a right to be here as refugees, and then go out and get jobs and work and make themselves better off, well, that's all fine and dandy. But the state shouldn't be handing this out. And the problem is, that we are being regarded as Treasure Island. People know if they can cross the channel, they will get looked after. They will be able to work in the illegal economy at the same time, which too many of them are already doing. And the numbers are impossible. And there is a clear majority of British people who do not want this to continue. So, fine, the refugee charities can say what they like. They are standing up for a minority view in this country. And they, of course, all have a hidden agenda, which is they are all absolute Trotskyites. They don't believe in a nation state. They don't believe in boundaries. They believe we're all global citizens. They don't believe in borders. I mean, that's the real agenda here.
Yeah, I would argue as well, Nigel, that they don't tend to believe in the personal safety of every single individual in this country. Why is nobody at frontline politics standing up to some of these so-called refugee charities?
It is astonishing. I've tried to fight some of these people. The trouble is they're well funded. If you make the slightest mistake, they get their lawyers onto you immediately. But I've done my best to expose what Care for Calais and others have been doing over the course of the last few years. The surprising thing is there's virtually nobody in Parliament, virtually nobody, out of all those 651 MPs prepared to stand up and say these things. And that's why we now have a disconnect between Westminster and the country on illegal immigration, on legal immigration. This gap is even bigger than the one we saw in the run-up to the Brexit referendum on membership of the European Union. London, the politicians, most of the media are completely out of touch with where the country is. We are an open-hearted, generous nation, far more so, actually, historically, than any of our European neighbours. What we don't like is having the mickey taken out of us.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely right. And you talk about our European neighbours. Over in France, Marine Le Pen, of course, has handed President Macron somewhat of a humiliating defeat. So Macron was forced to toughen up his flagship immigration bill in order to get it through the French Parliament. So under the new legislation, immigration quotas will be reintroduced and migrants in France will face tougher conditions to get residency permits. Look, is this another sign of the tide turning, do you think, on this open border mayhem? What do you reckon?
Oh, something very big is happening. I mean, Macron last night completely U-turned on pretty much everything he's ever stood for as the great modern liberal, Schengen supporter and all the rest of it. His party bowed to the Marine Le Pen agenda and the centre ground of opinion in France. It led to a split in his own party, a ministerial resignation. But he thinks, you see, now that I've done this, the threat of Le Pen will diminish. Well, let me draw a parallel. When I was called a fruitcake and a lunatic and other things too, for daring to advocate that we should have a vote on leaving the European Union, David Cameron thought, right, if I give a referendum, we'd have shot the Farage fox. All he did was legitimise my position, that it was something we should be debating. And I think Marine Le Pen, and she looks pretty jaunty there, doesn't she, in these pictures you're showing? I think all of this says to me, and I've said it before, but I'll say it again, she will one day be the president of France. It's coming.
Look, Nigel, I wanted to ask you this for a little while, actually. I had to wait for you to get out of the jungle. How do you see this panning out? OK, so next election looks like it's going to go to Labour. I don't think anyone realistically believes that we're going to end up seeing much tougher border control there. Possibly Reform might do well at the next election. Are the British public going to have to wait something like 5 or maybe 10 years to get a proper force in politics that actually deals with immigration? Many people will think that's just too late. The country will have gone by then.
Here's the irony, that Brexit Britain is now doing worse than the other countries. You know, Geert Wilders is probably going to become the Prime Minister in the Netherlands. Le Pen will take over in France. The EU itself overnight has announced a new migration deal, doing what I told them they should do back in 2015 in the European Parliament. I said to them, people crossing the Mediterranean who have no right to be refugees should be sent back. The EU today say they will allow member states to do that. And here we are, floundering, languishing. And the most interesting thing that happened in UK politics whilst I was in the jungle was the Jenrick resignation. He resigned as immigration minister, basically saying that this government is more worried about upsetting people on the international stage by being seen to be in breach of the United Nations 1951 Convention, or indeed the ECHR. It's more worried about that, how it looks on the world stage, than it is about delivering the promises it made in the run-up to the last election and the will of the British people. So yes, I'm afraid we are way behind the curve on this, and it's going to take a long time to sort out.
People talk about a globalist agenda, don't they, and a globalist elite, and then right in front of our very eyes and noses, we can see people who are, as you've just said there, more concerned about annoying people on the international stage than they are about the people who actually vote for them. You just wonder how people can continue to question that. But look, from France to mainland Europe as well, beyond France, to America now, where Donald Trump has been declared ineligible to run for US president by Colorado's Supreme Court. It ruled that he engaged in an insurrection because of his involvement in the January 6 riots. Nigel, are the anti-democratic attempts to stop Trump's return to the White House getting out of hand now?
This happened before. It happened before. In 1860, 10 southern states disbarred a man called Abraham Lincoln from being on the ballot, but he still won the presidency. But that happened as America was preparing for a bloody civil war of the loss of 750,000 lives. My fear is that the way these political appointees have behaved in Colorado last night sends a very bad message, which is, we have decided to remove from you your democratic rights to have the option to vote for a candidate you may choose. And by the way, this applies in March in Colorado. The primary for the Republicans takes place in March. So this is much more imminent than the November 2024 general election. And in doing so, they've given succor to states like Maine. Maine will make a similar decision, or at least have a vote on a similar outcome over the course of the next few days. We could finish up with lots of Democratic states removing Trump from the ballot. And that is why the American Supreme Court has to forget about Christmas holidays. The American Supreme Court needs to rule very quickly on Article 14 of the US Constitution, something written in the wake of the Civil War that has never, ever been used for political ends, ever. The American Supreme Court must put a stop to this, because you know what? If you remove people's right to vote, you force them to take other measures. And what happened on January the 6th will look like a Sunday afternoon tea party unless we get back some sense of perspective in America. What has happened is truly appalling, but you know what? Rather like Abraham Lincoln in 1860, all it's doing is making McDonald more and more popular.
Nigel, Thank you very, very much. That was Nigel Farage there. You can email in on any of that. Do you agree? Do you disagree? gbviews@gbnews.com. Get in touch. I want to hear from you. It's still popping off in the inbox, by the way, about those junior doctors' strikes. I've had Amy who's been on. Who says, Patrick, these junior doctors, they are essentially helping people to die over the Christmas period. But then I've got the polar opposite one here from Gary. Gary says, look, Patrick, just give them a pay rise and the problem goes away. Don't they deserve it? They save lives. So, heck of a lot coming up. But Keir Starmer's record as a lawyer is now under the microscope. And by the way, expect this to get very, very tasty in the run-up to the next election. It's revealed that he helped free some of Britain's most dangerous criminals who actually went on to commit more crimes. So can we trust Labour to be tough on crime? I'll tee off on that shortly. But next, Jeffrey Epstein's little black book is set to be published in the new year. But with celebrities set to be named and shamed, who are they? And what does it mean for Prince Andrew, top lawyer, who's represented 8 of the victims of Jeffrey Epstein, Eric Foudali, and investigative journalist as well, who helped to expose Ghislaine Maxwell's crimes? They are live next. Don't miss it.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christys Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Now, dozens of Jeffrey Epstein's associates are in for a New Year's nightmare when they are named in court documents set to be released in January after a ruling by a US judge earlier this week. Up to 177 people are expected to be exposed in the evidence, which was used in a defamation case brought by Prince Andrew's accuser, Virginia Roberts, against Epstein's co-conspirator, Ghislaine Maxwell. And Prince Andrew himself faces yet more embarrassing revelations, with the document set to reveal details of his alleged encounters with Joanna Sjoberg. who has accused the royal of groping her at Epstein's New York mansion in 2001. Buckingham Palace have previously said the allegations are categorically untrue, but there will be a heck of a lot of very, very worried people in the new year. Well, I'm joined now by investigative journalist Vicky Ward, who profiled Jeffrey Epstein for Vanity Fair magazine in 2003 and presented the much-acclaimed Chasing Ghislaine podcast series. And I've also got lawyer Eric Fadali, who represented 8 of Epstein's victims. Both of you, thank you very, very much. Vicky, can I start with you? I mean, a lot of very nervous people out there. What do you expect to come out of these revelations at the moment?
Well, you know, I think we're going to learn, Patrick, more details about the ecosystem that enabled Jeffrey Epstein to perpetrate these sex crimes at the scale that he did. You know, Virginia Roberts is at the heart of everything, really, and and she was sort of the missing ghost, if you want, in the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. In that, the names of a lot of the people I think that are going to be unsealed in January were there on the page, up on the screen in the courtroom, and yet they were blacked out, and you could tell that they had come from papers around Virginia Giuffre, but she was not there. She was not called as a witness in that case. So I think it's going to be really, really important and interesting to see the name she reveals. I do hear that there's one academic whose name may take everybody by surprise, but I don't know any more than that.
One academic whose name might take everybody by surprise. That'll get tongues wagging. I might return back to that. But, Eric, I'll bring you in here now. Look, are we on the brink of discovering that there is actually a kind of shadowy, elitist paedophile ring here? I mean, is this what's about to happen?
I'm not sure I would go that far, but what is known in the United States and around the world is that Jeffrey Epstein surrounded himself with very powerful and influential people. That is not a mystery. That is how Jeffrey Epstein perpetrated this scheme. He would use pictures of himself with very famous and powerful people around the globe to intimidate his victims. We've heard rumors, we've seen names, we've seen lawsuits. So there's certainly no question that he did surround himself with powerful and very influential people around the world. At this point, it is still unclear as to what will be revealed, whose names will not be on that list. But one thing is for sure, I get asked a lot, who was Jeffrey Epstein, trafficking these women for? And the answer, to most people's surprise, it was him primarily. Remember, Jeffrey Epstein would have multiple victims per day for many, many years. So I think people sometimes are often shocked to learn that really this sex trafficking scheme was really about Epstein's own depraved gratification, while there are maybe other people in the orbit. It really was about Epstein.
Vicky, a lot of people think, look, Ghislaine Maxwell obviously, has done some incredibly unspeakable things by the looks of things. You profiled Jeffrey Epstein back in 2003. Is there actually some logic to the idea that, a woman is serving hard time here for a lot more crimes committed by a lot of other very powerful men?
Absolutely, Patrick. I mean, what Ghislaine Maxwell did, as you say, is unspeakable, and people find the idea of a woman doing this to other women particularly horrific. But it was men rich, powerful men, as Eric just said, who enabled Jeffrey Epstein. The names of these guys keep on coming out in more and more litigation. Most recently, we've had the banks, JP Morgan and Deutsche Bank, litigation against Epstein victims. When going back to the Ghislaine Maxwell trial, there were names that I didn't know had been connected with Jeffrey Epstein. Fidel Castro, there was a picture of him. Yeah. The musician, Zach Perlman. These are John Glenn. These names came up in that courtroom. We don't know if they shook his hand. We don't know what the connection was, but I do think that Virginia Roberts, what is going to come out in these unsealed filings, should give us a clearer, maybe more horrific picture of what went on.
I mean, it is going to be kind of morbidly fascinating. Eric, we're a little bit pressed for time, but how much does Prince Andrew have to sweat on this, do you think?
Well, I think we've already heard a lot of the allegations against Prince Andrew. Of course, Prince Andrew settled his case with Ms. Giuffre. So I'm not really sure there's much out there, right? He already settled his case. That case is done. You can read into the settlement as much as you'd like or not. I'm not sure there's too much, sweating, quote unquote, that he must do, as so much has already been alleged against him. I don't know how much more is out there.
Look, both of you, I want to do this again in the new year, and hopefully we've got a bit more to go at that we can actually say. So thank you very much. There's investigative journalist Vicky Ward and the lawyer Eric Fidali. Look, coming up, more grief for our brave war veterans. The IRA got immunity, but now there are calls to keep prosecuting elderly veterans for things that they may have done in the past. And can Keir Starmer be trusted after it's emerged that he helped free some dangerous criminals from prison who went on to commit crimes again?
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. Thursday is going to be a very blustery day for the UK, with a wind warning in force for a large swathe of the UK. That's as Storm Pia, named by the Danish Met Service, will sweep this frontal system across the UK. The strongest winds are expected to be into the North Sea, but we will see some very gusty winds across the bulk of northern areas of the UK. Before then, though, we'll see a lot of cloud around through the rest of the night. Persistent drizzly rain across northern and western areas. That rain will give way to blustery showers across the north of Scotland by tomorrow morning, and at this point the winds really strengthen. We could see storm force winds across the Northern Isles, but gales quite widely where we do have that warning in force. That rain band sweeps southward through the day, so the skies will become clearer. There will be some sunny spells by the afternoon, but as I said, it is going to be a very blustery afternoon, and there will be some quite intense showers moving in from the north and west. The southwest will hold on to the slightly milder air, but a lot more of that cloud and rain through much of the day, and we're likely to see some travel delays due to that wind warning as well. Friday will likely be a calmer but still quite a windy day, and we'll see a stream of showers still moving in from the north and west. In the southwest, though, a drier and brighter day. However, in the far north, with the strong winds and a risk of snow showers, there is a risk of blizzards. Into the weekend, though, it does stay mild and windy in the run up to Christmas. That's all for now. See you later.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christys Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
It's 10 p.m. and this is Patrick Christys Tonight.
Okay. Come on, keep the door.
After it's emerged that Labour leader Keir Starmer got violent thugs out of prison and stopped criminals being deported, can he be trusted to tackle lawless Britain? Or is Labour still on the side of our enemies? And what about our brave veterans? The IRA got immunity, but now there are calls to keep prosecuting elderly veterans for things they may have done in the past. Why are we treating terrorists better than our own armed forces? And look how far Meghan Markle has fallen.
Women team that have helped make 2023.
Yeah, she's now working as an extra in a coffee advert. What a fall from grace. What's in tomorrow's newspapers, though? I will give you a first glimpse at 10:30 with my panel of news hounds. Christine Hamilton, Adam Brooks and Benjamin Butterworth all primed and ready to go. Oh, and someone's got the hump with the ULEZ charge. It's just a casual camel there strolling down the street. Find out what's really going on there. This is Patrick Christys Tonight. It's all go. Email me now. Is Keir Starmer too soft on violent thugs? Can he be trusted? GBviews at gbnews.com. I'll see you after the headlines.
Patrick, thank you. Good evening. Well, the top story from the GB newsroom is that a man who confessed to the killing of his ex-partner to an undercover police officer has been sentenced to life in prison and will serve a minimum term of 20 years. Claire Holland was last seen leaving a pub in June 2012. In 2019, Darren Osment did confess to killing a woman during a 999 call, but then later denied it. An undercover officer befriended him over 20 months and managed to covertly record his confession. The Chancellor says inflation fell to 3.9% due to difficult decisions the government made a year ago. Newly released ONS figures show UK inflation fell from 4.6% in October. That's still well above the Bank of England's goal of 2%. The ONS saying a decrease in fuel prices was the biggest reason for the fall. Food prices are also rising more slowly. A local council is appealing against a High Court decision allowing the Home Office to house illegal migrants on RAF Scampton. The former airbase near Lincoln is currently earmarked to accommodate 2,000 single adult male illegal migrants. Councillors voted unanimously to bring the action, saying the site, which was once the home of the dam busters, isn't suitable. RAF Scampton had previously been earmarked for a landmark £300 million investment plan. Politics and Baroness Michelle Mone says she has an audio recording of a senior civil servant offering to make a National Crime Agency investigation go away if she paid money to the government. It comes after she admitted she is set to benefit from a contract with PPE firm MedPro, which earned a £60 million profit supplying protective equipment to the NHS during the pandemic. Earlier, Levelling Up Secretary Michael Gove said he hoped she would see a criminal case brought against her. In the United States, Donald Trump has accused President Biden of trying to stop him by any means necessary after he was barred from running for president in the state of Colorado. Mr. Trump was addressing a rally in Iowa after Colorado's Supreme Court disqualified him over his alleged role in the January the 6th Capitol Hill attacks. The ruling makes Trump the first presidential candidate in US history to be deemed ineligible for the White House. The Trump campaign will now ask the US Supreme Court to overturn the decision. MP Andrew Bridgen has resigned from the Reclaim Party, citing a difference in direction. In a statement, the Member of Parliament for North West Leicestershire said the likelihood of a general election next year was also a factor. A spokesman for the MP told GB News he'll be standing as an independent. Reclaim responded, saying they were both better positioned to pursue their objectives independently now. And lastly, a British millionaire and former diplomat kidnapped in Ecuador has been found by police. 78-year-old Colin Armstrong and his girlfriend, Catherine Paula Santos, were taken by armed men from their villa in Los Rios on Saturday. Ecuador's chief of police says Mr Armstrong was found on the road to Manabí, not far from his home. According to reports, Ms Santos has also been rescued. 9 people have been arrested. That's the news on GB News, across the UK on TV, in your car on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. This is Britain's News Channel.
Keir Starmer's record as a lawyer is coming under the microscope, and you can expect a lot more of this in the run-up to the general election. The Labour Party has long had a reputation as being on the side of Britain's enemies. The IRA getting letters of comfort, Corbyn being friends with Hamas, taking the knee during the Black Lives Matter protests, receiving money from Just Stop Oil, loads of Labour politicians having thinly veiled views that many people would regard as being anti-Semitic. But when Keir Starmer was a top lawyer, it's reported that in 69 out of 84 cases between 1994 and 2007, he defended violent criminals, terror suspects and police killers. One of the people he helped to free was Paul Stellato, who committed 171 offences, also received around £30,000 in compensation for being unlawfully held in prison, and would later be jailed for life in 2018 for attempting to buy hand grenades. Now, Sir Keir successfully argued that having served 3/4 of his 10-year sentence, he was now entitled to unconditional release, despite being recalled to prison twice for breaching the terms of his early release. Sir Keir's legal case, brought in 2006, also reportedly freed 15 other dangerous criminals, including a rapist and a Satanist who sexually abused children. There is, of course, the argument that this makes Sir Keir very good at his job, in the sense that he was able to win these cases. But that's not how Wendy Ballard sees it, the mother of one of Stellato's victims. She told The Telegraph, "What Starmer did had a terrible impact on my family. He's just as much to blame for that as Paul Stellato is." In the past, Keir Starmer signed a letter in 2020 calling for 50 dangerous offenders not to be deported on a flight to Jamaica. This included violent thugs, drug dealers and a stalker who carried out further crimes in the UK after the Labour leader campaigned for them to stay in Britain. Now, one national newspaper has revealed that Sir Keir Starmer demanded the Home Office halt all deportation flights just weeks before he took charge of the Labour Party. Apparently, he backed calls to hand them mobile phone SIM cards to help them arrange last-ditch reviews. And tonight, just in the last few moments, The Telegraph has revealed that Starmer represented Abu Qatada in court, helping the notorious hate preacher fight to avoid deportation. Qatada, who has been described as Osama bin Laden's ambassador in Europe, was represented by the Labour leader at a hearing in 2008, apparently. This guy, of course, Keir Starmer, also wanted Jeremy Corbyn to be Prime Minister, but now he's saying that he never really liked him that much. He wanted to keep violent thugs in Britain, but now he's saying he'll be tough on law and order and on Britain's borders. Can Starmer really be trusted? To respond to this now, I'm again joined by author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton, businessman and activist Adam Brooks, and journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth. Christine, can Starmer be trusted, or do you think he's got a penchant for wrong uns?
Well, I certainly think Labour are more likely to be soft on law and order and crime than the Tories are, but I do think, in Starmer's defence, barristers operate on a cab rank system. Like, you go up to the first cab in the line and they have to take you, unless, you know, they have to take you if they've wound down the window. The person who really should be to blame for those decisions is the judge who agreed. I mean, Starmer was, to a large extent... Obviously, I understand how the mother feels, of course. I mean, one would be horrified. But, you know, Starmer was doing his job, and as I think you said, he's obviously very good at it. So I think it's slightly unfair, but... And it's negative campaigning, of course, and negative campaigning works. It is no worse than what the Labour Party did about Sunak recently with all that stuff on social media. implying that he wanted to let paedophiles out of prison and goodness knows what. And, of course, the famous one was Labour isn't working, which was a brilliant negative ad. But, yes, definitely, I think they're going to be much softer on law and order. But you know, he was doing his job, and he was obviously
Adam,
a very good QC.
Look, Adam, I think you have a different view, don't you? You think that he wasn't just doing his job, is that right?
I have to question anyone, really, that knowingly allows violent rapists, terrorists, child abusers, paedophiles out of prison on technicalities. You know, I know they're doing their job, but I couldn't sleep at night if I knowingly did that. And it worries me that this man is going to be the Prime Minister for many reasons. But I have 3 children, and even though this government has been pretty poor the last few years, I honestly think that Labour is going to be an absolute disaster with crime, and it worries me.
OK. Benjamin, it's one thing doing your job in court and doing it very well and getting people off and out. It's another thing actively campaigning to get people off a deportation flight, a flight that, as it turned out, contained some vile thugs that went on to commit other crimes. For that, surely, that's a big stain on Keir's reputation.
I mean, look, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night if we didn't have a functioning and appropriate justice system. People that represent alleged murderers and paedophiles and rapists are not defending the actions their client is accused of. They are exercising the absolute basics of a civilised and democratic system like the one that Britain has pioneered for, 1,000 years.
Getting people released early on technicalities, knowing they're a danger to society. I couldn't sleep at night.
Well, you sound like an idiot, because that is exactly how the justice system works.
Most weeks, but okay.
That's how the justice system works, right? Are you saying that if someone accused you of an atrocious crime, that you shouldn't have a lawyer?
Ben, I'm already
Are you saying that you shouldn't have a lawyer if accused of an atrocious crime?
I've already said it's his job. I'm saying I could not sleep at night, and I do not want a man that can easily sleep at night knowing he's putting dangerous people on the streets.
Well, in that case,
as our Prime Minister.
In that case, you put out of work most barristers and lawyers in this country.
Most barristers are not trying to be the Prime Minister of this country. Your argument's falling flat.
We've had several. It's not at all, because that is how the justice system works, right? You defend your client, and I don't care what you're accused of. You are entitled to legal representation.
He's not.
And it doesn't mean you don't seem to understand that it doesn't mean you endorse the allegations. It means you're exercising the law, and the law isn't set by a judge or a barrister or a lawyer. It's set by the government.
Don't belittle me. I understand fully. I'm saying I do not want that sort of person running a country that can go to bed at night and he's getting terrorists out on technicalities.
You know what I think is concerning is the fact that 30,000 sex offenders have not had jail time in the 13 years of Tory government. 1,000 people who've been found to have possessed a gun have not gone to prison under a Tory government. That is what should be of concern.
And who was the head of the CPS a lot of that time?
Well, he left in, 2014? And let me tell you, when you had the cases in Rotherham and the Pakistani grooming gangs, who was it who, as Director of Public Prosecutions, changed the rules to make it easier for them to bring their cases a second time?
What councils did that mainly happen in? Labour.
Well, actually, the woman, I forget her name, who became a hero.
Who was a bad example,
Sarah Champion's exceptional.
But then the then leader of the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn, basically, she kept quiet quite a bit after that. Christine, you were itching to get involved.
Well, no, I was just going to say that these two were... Well, I didn't want to get involved because I was enjoying it, but they were both arguing two different things. I mean, Adam was saying he couldn't sleep at night having done that, and Benjamin was agreeing with me that barristers have a job to do. Even the Nazi defendants at Nuremberg were entitled and got legal representation. It's a fundamental principle.
Did any of them then go to run as a Prime Minister? No, that is my point.
They didn't. No, I started by saying that I didn't trust Labour on law and order. I certainly don't trust Keir Starmer on law and order. I am just trying, I think, to defend his position when he was a QC, not a KC, he was QC then. He was doing his job.
Do you accept, Benjamin, that it's part of a basket of things with Keir Starmer? We've got the old taking of the knee of BLM. We've got, accepting money, it would appear anyway, from Just Stop Oil. We've got, he's presiding over a party that has had some, as I know you feel strongly about, some very few fruity views about the Palestine-Hamas situation that's taking place over there. He did try to get Corbyn elected not once but twice, and then we've got the deportation flights, and we've got his record as an actual lawyer.
First of all...
Is that a problem for you? you
There
or
is
not.
no association between taking the knee between Black Lives Matter and defending... You were entitled to think that, but there's no connection...
Not people who wanted to defund the police.
Hang on, there's no connection to organised crime or letting off criminals.
Defund the police.
You then falsely claim that he took money from Just Stop Oil, which is complete fabrication.
The Labour Party.
There is a main funder of Just Stop Oil who no longer funds them, who also fund the Labour Party. That is not the same thing. The truth is, there's not at all...
He's the head of the Labour Party.
The truth is that this is a man, Keir Starmer, who's so committed to safety and getting criminals convicted that as Director of Public Prosecutions, he put 500,000 people a year away with criminal
and was
conviction.
happy to let stalkers and violent thugs off a plane, sign a letter, give them a SIM card so that they can, you know, go and try and find their cases and stop all deportations. Let's stop all deportations.
If you weren't just trying to peddle desperate right-wing talking points, then you would ask, why is it that sex offenders are not going in prison cells because there aren't enough of them being built, that the court system has such a backlog that we can't even get serious offenders locked up? That is on the watch of a Tory government.
What I will say is absolutely true is yet another example of not enough infrastructure being built for the amount of criminals that we have. On that, I will absolutely agree with you. Adam, over to you on this one. Look, do you think that there is a fundamental problem when it comes to being able to trust Keir Starmer with law and order, with being on the side of the people?
It's very hard for me. I won't be voting Conservative, and I certainly won't be voting Labour. Things are really bad at the moment, and that's undeniable. This government has let everyone down. But I do prescribe that this is going to get a lot worse under this Labour government. He cannot make a decision, Keir Starmer. During COVID, he just waved through and asked for more COVID rules. You know, and now, with law and order, and it's a disaster waiting to happen.
All right, look, we'll go on, final
Well, I just say he is terrified of putting a foot wrong. The next government is his for the asking, and anything he says could be used in evidence against him.
He didn't even know what a woman was.
All right, OK, right, now, look, that is an incredibly brilliant start to this hour, I must say. Keir Starmer, we've got a right of reply from the Labour Party. Keir Starmer was the country's most senior prosecutor, serving under Labour and Tory governments. During this time, he oversaw the first ever prosecution of al-Qaeda terrorists, the jailing of the airline liquid bomb plotters and racist murderers of Stephen Lawrence. Of course, as a lawyer, he's had to represent some people whose views he doesn't agree with. That's what the job of a lawyer involves. These are simply desperate attacks from a Tory party that has given up on running the country. But as I was saying, we do have in our newspaper review for you something rather interesting that has just landed in the Telegraph about Keir Starmer and defending Abu Qatada as well. But there we go. Coming up, as Meghan Markle makes a bizarre return to acting in an ad for an uber-trendy coffee company, are the Sussexes becoming increasingly desperate? But next, as Rishi Sunak vows to fight the Irish government's attempt to strike down a British law that gives legal immunity to hundreds of British soldiers who fought during the Troubles, I'm joined by former Army officer and Tory MP James Sunderland. The IRA got letters of comfort, OK? We have had brave military heroes in the past, like Dennis Hutchins, who was tried not once, but twice, and then a third time for a murder. He sadly died whilst awaiting, on his own, may I add, whilst awaiting the third trial. Why do we treat IRA terrorists better than some of our own members of our armed forces? That's next. But before that, here at GB News, of course, a bit of a shift in tone now. We want to make sure your new year is spectacular. £10,000 in cash, a new iPhone and vouchers. Someone is guaranteed to win all these prizes. It could be you. Here's how you could be our first winner.
You really could be the winner of the very first Great British Giveaway and receive nearly £12,000 worth of prizes from us. First, we've got a simply stunning £10,000 in tax-free cash to give you. Cash that you can spend on anything you like. Next, how about a new phone? You'll also get a brand new iPhone 15 Pro Max. And if all of that wasn't enough, how about a further £500 in shopping vouchers to spend at the store of your choice? For another chance to win the iPhone, the vouchers and £10,000 cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB01, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday, the 5th of January. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Good luck.
Up next, Tory MP and former Army Colonel James Sunderland reacts to Ireland's egregious ECHR classic challenge of the Troubles Amnesty Act. Don't go anywhere, it's time to stand up for our veterans.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christys Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Now, Irish Prime Minister Leo Varadkar has announced that Dublin is planning to sue the UK government over its attempt to stop inquests, cases and prosecutions for during the Troubles. The Troubles Legacy Bill offers conditional immunity to people on both sides of the conflict, but critics say it prevents justice being done for victims of the IRA and British forces. Look, it sounds complicated, this, but I think there's a very, very important thing right at its heart, which we're going to get stuck into. Leo Varadkar boldly claimed they had no option but to challenge the British government in the ECHR.
The Legacy Act is in breach of the UN Convention on Human Rights. That's also the view of the UN High Commissioner and also the Council of Europe. It is something that we're genuinely doing with a sense of regret. We prefer not to be in this position, but we did make a commitment to survivors in Northern Ireland and the families of victims.
Interesting. I don't really seem to remember him going into bat so strongly for his own people after they echoed massive, massive disquiet in the face of his ridiculous migration policies. But the Northern Ireland Secretary, Chris Harris, described the legal challenge as a misguided action. He questioned Dublin's own record in pursuing justice for victims of the atrocities during the Troubles. Well, look, to react to this developing story now, and it's of great significance, I'm joined by former Army Colonel and Conservative MP James Sunderland. James, thank you very, very much. Now, look, members of the IRA were given letters of comfort. We had military veterans like Dennis Hutchins, who died awaiting trial, I think, for a third time for a crime that he denied and was found not guilty of twice before. What on earth is going on here when it comes to our veterans?
Well, the Conservative Party stood in 2019 on a manifesto which promised many things, and resolving the endless cycle of vexatious claims against veterans who'd served in Northern Ireland was one of those manifesto promises. And I'm pleased to say that the British government, under a Conservative Prime Minister, has delivered that manifesto promise, put this bill through Parliament. It's now an act of law, and I welcome it.
Does Leo Varadkar just want members of the IRA to be able to walk free, but British Armed Forces personnel to serve time for crimes that they may or may not have committed decades ago?
You'd think so, wouldn't you? I mean, it's a very strange announcement today. I mean, I think that there's a sense of Hotel California about this from the Irish government. You can check out any time you like from the EU, but you can never leave. And I hazard a guess that that there is some sort of scaremongering here. It may be electioneering. There's an election coming up, who knows? But the bottom line is, this particular act that's now in law offers equality to all parties, all stakeholders. So it's not favouring the IRA, it's not favouring British veterans, it's not favouring loyalist communities either. What it's doing is actually drawing a line in the sand, in law, which means that we all should be able to move forward now from the Troubles.
Yeah, no, indeed. And what would your message be to Leo Varadkar, who, you know, probably would be quite happy, it appears anyway, to see now, you know, a relatively elderly military veteran get a knock on the door one day? Sir, where were you on April the goodness knows what in goodness knows what year? Can you remember what you did? Or can you come with us, please? We're taking you to Dublin so you can face a murder trial. I mean, who the heck does this guy think he is?
I totally agree. I mean, we've got many, many examples of veterans over the years being hounded by the courts in Northern Ireland, brought back to courtrooms, living in fear, waiting for the next knock at the door. I mean, the promise was made to stop the cycle of vexatious claims against veterans. That's now been delivered. That's a good thing. Let's move on. But what's clear for me is that actually there's an element of hypocrisy here, because the Irish government's own record in this since 1998 is pretty woeful. Indeed, the Secretary of State asked the Irish government today how many prosecutions they'd successfully brought since the Good Friday Agreement. I think the answer's, very few.
Yeah, no, indeed. And, of course, I'm absolutely sure that he doesn't want reminding of his country's record during World War II. I mean, that would be rather unfortunate for this guy, wouldn't it? Do you think this could be the final nail in the coffin for a lot of people, though, who are still on the fence about the ECHR? You know, this idea now that the Taoiseach of Ireland, who is, on pretty thin ice in his own country, given recent events, could decide to take us, could pipe up and decide to take us to a court abroad to have some ruling done by a foreign judge. I mean, we've got to get out of this, have we, or not? I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, we have. And we've seen this time and time again. We're seeing this with that cycle of vexatious complaints. We're seeing it with the Rwanda bill at the moment. We are seeing the difficulties of having left the European Union. What's interesting today, of course, is that the Irish government's criticised the British government for, quote, unilaterally passing legislation. Well, funny old thing. The UK is a sovereign country. We've left the European Union. One of the beauties of Brexit is that we can now pass our own laws that determine our own future. And that's something that clearly the Irish government doesn't particularly like.
Yeah, I mean, this does seem like maybe shameless anti-British point scoring. I do put it to you, though, James, that this seems to be on the rise. Everybody loves to hate Britain at the moment. What do you blame that on?
Well, I think there's a bit of jealousy there, actually. I mean, if you look at what's happening in Europe at the moment, you look at the economies which aren't performing, you look at inflation, which is now higher. If you look at the migration problem across Europe, the UK is in a very good position post Brexit. I'm not naive to think that it's perfect. Of course, it's not.
Not necessarily on migration, but I'll take your point on the others. But carry on.
Not at all. But the beauty of Brexit is that we've now got the ability to tackle things that we couldn't before, whilst a member of the European Union. But importantly, and back to the key issue, I think it is important that communities in Northern Ireland try and move on. We've seen very few prosecutions over the years. The Good Friday Agreement is very successful, and quite clearly, cases aren't being brought to court because of the lack of evidence. And what we've now got is a framework through this thing called the Independent Commission for Reconciliation and Information Recovery, whereby we can now get the information that we seek.
Look, James, I think I know your answer to this, but it'd be great for everyone to hear it, I think, really. You know, do we have to put a ring of steel around our veterans now? We do have a problem with veterans' homelessness. You know, I get that. We have a problem with, you know, some cases, access to mental health care and housing and things along those lines. So things are, you know, bad enough in some cases, veterans in this country. You know, no matter what the ECHR says in all of this, no matter what Leo Varadkar says in all of this, you know, no former member of our armed forces should be getting on a plane and being sent to Ireland, either Northern Ireland or the Republic of Ireland, to face anything there as a result of what may or may not have happened in the Troubles. Is that your view?
Yeah, I mean, the offer to our veterans, 2.3 million veterans in the UK today, including 120,000 in Northern Ireland, the offer to our veterans today is much better than it was before this Act was passed. But I'd also say to you the fact that politics is an imperfect sport. There's always more to do. There's always compromise. But I'm going to publicly commend Johnny Mercer for the excellent work that he's done as a Veterans Minister. He's made this his life's work in Parliament. The offer is getting better all of the time. Mental health support, courage, support for our veterans. The list goes on. And actually, this is just the latest chapter, in my view, to the UK becoming the best country in the world to be a veteran.
Right, good. I do hope that comes to fruition. Can I thank you very much, James, for coming on, especially a little bit late in the day. Take care. All right, that is former Army Colonel and Conservative MP James Sunderland. Look, we've got to do everything that we possibly can to stand up for our veterans. I don't know who the heck Leo Varadkar thinks he is, but you can back off if you think you're getting the hands on any of our brave military service personnel. Those letters of comfort that the IRA have got, I mean, yeah, all right, we can have those back if you really want to. But coming up, my press pack are primed for their unrivalled analysis of tomorrow's newspaper front pages. Plus, how long will the Sussexes go to hog the limelight? I will show you Meghan's latest attempt to stay relevant. That's next. You will not want to miss the next 30 minutes. No reason to go to bed.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christys Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Coming in hot now with tomorrow's news tonight. In the liveliest paper review you will get anywhere on the telly, the very first front pages have just been delivered. It's the press pack. Right, we're going with the Metro. Found alive, kidnapped Brit, 78, set up by lover. Who could have seen that coming? Anyone? No one? No one at all. No. A British millionaire kidnapped by a brutal crime cartel in Ecuador has been rescued, and his younger girlfriend is being questioned by police. Moving on. The Eye, tax cuts in 2024 after surprise fall in inflation. Early interest rate cut also predicted in boost for mortgages. A bit of good financial news for everybody here. What will that mean for Sunak ahead of the election? The Daily Mail. What they did to our beautiful Brianna will haunt us forever. As police reveal torture-obsessed 15-year-old murderers had a thirst for killing, their victim's heartbroken mum and dad speak. Yeah, really devastating story. That Brianna Gay, of course, who was just slaughtered, actually, and 2 people now have been found guilty. We go to the Sun now. Bargain Hunt star's attack charges. Grief, here we go. Bargain Hunt star Charles Hanson, me neither, has been charged following a police probe into domestic abuse allegations. OK, well, obviously, it sounds like an active case. We'll leave that there. The Times. Cheaper mortgages set to ease living costs, so 5-year deal below 4% as inflation drops. Again, another good financial story. They're still running that story as well on the side of the Times there about Brianna Gay, who was sadly murdered, that transgender teenager. Entente cordiale gives second home Brits longer in France. Britons with second home in France will be granted automatic long-stay visas. That, I imagine, will please a fraction of people. The Daily Express now. We must give Dame Esther her final campaign victory. Really interesting. The Daily Express have come into bat for this, I must say. Today, the Daily Express urges MPs to grant Esther Rantzen the chance to hear a debate on assisted dying, an issue which matters very much to her. The Dignitas debate rumbles on. So those are your front pages. It's time to pick through some of them, of course. With my press pack, I've got author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton, businessman and activist Adam Brooks, journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth. Quite a lot to pick over here, isn't there, really? I mean, I think one of the ones that stands out to me is what's on the front of the Metro as well. Found alive, kidnapped Brit here, a 78 set up by lover. But I know you guys have been picking through some of the papers as well, haven't you? What's a couple of the things that stood out to you, Christine, in our press packs? There's some inside stories as well, aren't there, as well?
Oh, help, sorry, I didn't know you...
Oh, that's all right, no, sorry, go on. I mean, go on, Ben.
Well, there's a story that's made the front page of The Guardian, which is that they're looking to allow police to use surveillance cameras to be able to track the face of 50 million drivers. So if you have a driver's licence, if you're driving down the motorway, the cameras they're installing will be able to check your identity to see if you're accused of crimes, to record it, to access prosecution faster, which I think is quite an extraordinary suggestion on the sort of privacy that people expect, the kind of power that AI and that cameras have.
Go on.
Well, I'd rather take the view that whatever you do, wherever you go, we would have been photographed coming into this building, we'll be photographed going out, you'll be photographed going around the corner.
I put a dodgy photo of you up on Twitter earlier on.
Yes, you did. Thank you very much. But we are photographed everywhere, and my basic view is if you've got nothing to hide, you haven't done anything wrong, does it matter? I do, on the other hand, I'm a bit conflicted about this, as is Adam. We were talking about it in the green room. You know, it's this massive Big Brother society. They're watching you everywhere. On the other hand, we want them to catch criminals, and if this will help, it will help them to catch...
Go on, Adam. Is this Big Brother writ large in our lives?
Yeah, it's a bit like a Chinese state, isn't it? You feel like everyone's watching you all the time. And, I mean, looking at that, all I can say is that I can see a lot of criminals cancelling their driving licences and not taking up driving in the future if this is the case, you know.
But you know, I've not said this on telly before because it was quite
yourselves in everybody.
Oh, look out!
Because it was quite traumatising. But in January of this year, my flat was raided and I was arrested by 4 police officers. I had done absolutely nothing wrong. I was in bed eating a burger at the time, but there'd been
never eat in bed.
That's pretty hideous.
That's bad enough. But I had a false accusation of trying to stab someone that was completely fabricated. And despite the fact that it was so tangibly untrue, I was arrested. I was taken to Hammersmith Police Station and I had a mugshot done, I had my hair taken, I had a swab, there wasn't much left, I had a swab of the inside of my mouth, and all of those records were taken on police records, and they were told me that I'd be notified of them being gotten rid of, but no such notification has ever come.
They won't be.
And so I used to think, well, if you're doing nothing wrong, why should you fear this kind of thing? But when a completely nonsensical allegation from someone with an axe to grind came, and I had a horrendous experience of 16 hours in a cell, they still have all those personal records of my DNA that they could have in perpetuity. And that really changed my idea of what the Big Brother state can do. You know, the idea that, you know, maybe that will flag up if I were driving down the motorway. Now, the main problem with that was that I don't have a driving licence. That would be the real concern.
So are you now denying that you tried to stab me?
Yes, exactly.
But no, seriously, that is... Yeah, but that is part of the problem, right? That something like that can happen, and then...
We all want a safe society.
Forever.
But we all want a safe society, but there's boundaries.
Yeah.
And we are inching closer to a Chinese state. And I've worked, during COVID, I worked with Big Brother Watch, Silky at Big Brother Watch, really good for human rights and this sort of stuff. They're going to be all over this.
Yeah, they are going to be all over this. Well, let us know what you think at home as well, gbviews@gbnews.com. But Meghan Markle has made a return to the small screen after appearing in quite a bizarre Instagram advert for the coffee company. Clever? Yeah, not very, really. But now, we all know the Duchess is no stranger to stealing the spotlight. But, I mean, look, this really isn't her finest work.
I want to give a huge shout out to our amazing, clever team here at HQ. Without them, we are nothing. Our fulfillment crew, lovingly packing your lattes. We've been listening to Britney on loop since 2019. Our very smart, only slightly nerdy digital team, making sure the website doesn't crash again like it did last year. Finally, the glue that literally holds us all together. Our incredible, resilient fulfillment team that have helped make 2023 such a big success.
Duchess has owned shares in the business since 2020 and is praised by CEO and co-founder Hannah Mendoza. So grateful, I won't do the voice, so grateful for the immense love and support this year. Thanks for helping us keep the latte-loving dream alive and thriving. What a fall from grace, Adam.
She's always been, you know, a fame-hungry person, individual. And when she first come over to this country, it's alleged by many in circles in London that she was desperate for a famous boyfriend. So this doesn't surprise me.
And I was taken.
And she just wants her face on everything, you know. So
I can't believe I'm doing this. I've already defended Keir Starmer, and I'm about to defend Meghan Markle. She's invested in this company. I mean, everything about this company puts my hair on end. It's one of the most ghastly, wokey, ghastly things. The very way they call it clever, C-L-E-V-R. I mean, for goodness sake, it's all about spreading love and all this sort of business. But she's a friend of that person. She hasn't done that as a job. She's done it as a favour.
She's a royal.
Why not? She's not royal, for goodness sake.
Well,
Pull the other one. She's not royal. The one thing she's not is royal. Of course, she shouldn't really do it, but I mean,
all right.
I don't think it's a massive big deal.
All right, fair enough on that note, then. Just
compared to what else she's done.
Pouring a cup of cold water over our viral clip there, Christine.
Sorry about that.
As junior doctors cripple the NHS with yet another strike, are they selfishly putting themselves before the needs of their patients during a busy Christmas period? We discuss when I crown my greatest Britain and Union jackass later. What's the strangest thing you've ever seen casually walking down your street? Now, ask Benjamin. I bet it won't be as odd as what I'm about to show you next. And you will want to see what's on the front of the Telegraph. Don't miss this.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
More front pages now with my esteemed panel, hot off the press. Here we go. So we're going in now with the Mirror. So they start with, "We will never stop loving her. Parents' heartbreaking tribute to their funny, fearless child whose life was brutally taken by two 15-year-olds with a thirst for killing." It's the murder of Brianna Gay, who was stabbed to death in a vicious attack in a park not so long ago. The next paper that we're going to be going with is The Telegraph. Sunak vows to defend Ulster veterans. We just covered that, so slightly ahead of the game there. Outrageous Westminster as Ireland takes UK to ECHR. I'm just going to say just the different ways that when Leo Varadkar gets gone, he can go off some further as far as I'm concerned, this guy. He needs to sort out his own problems in his own country. PM faces rebellion over heat pumps. Good, not before time. This is one I like. Starmer argued for radical cleric Abu Qatada in deportation fight. Sir Keir Starmer represented Abu Qatada in court as the notorious hate preacher fought to avoid deportation from the UK. We will add that to the list of wrong-uns. We've already touched on the Guardian as well, but I know that there is a story on the inside of one of the papers that's got my panel going, and it's about Michelle Mone. What's happening with Michelle Mone, I believe, Christine?
Well, as if this couldn't get even more extraordinary there, the New European newspaper is going to sue her, possibly, because now she's admitted lying to the press, because quote, this is a New European, we were forced to spend several £1,000s of cost in legal fees responding to her mendacious threats. We want our money back. Well, frankly, who can blame them?
Well, she's got a lot of money.
She's got a lot of money, but then she is now about, I think, to throw a bomb into the whole business. She says that a senior civil servant offered to make the investigation into them go away if we paid the government a sum of money. She says we have a recording of this on tape. So
yeah, it's all getting very murky, isn't it?
Murky. She's not going down alone, is she?
This could explode, and this could come back on Rishi Sunak, on the whole government, and really, really cause a problem. You know, she's not going down...
No, on her own.
On her own, no way.
No. Benjamin, how do you see this, Annie? So Michelle Mone, look, everyone knows who she is now. I think if you don't, she...
Lady Bra.
I need to be very careful what I say here, but basically, you know, her husband and her made a lot of money during the PPE need during the pandemic. I think everyone knows the drill, about 60 million quid. She obviously disputes that anything malicious or inaccurate has taken place here. A lot of people think that there has been. What's the latest instalment of this then, Benjamin?
I mean, look, I would say if she, you know, if the offer from a civil servant, as she claims, and we haven't seen the evidence, was that we won't investigate if you give some of that money back to the public purse. I actually don't think that would be... I think that would be in the public interest if that were the case, but, you know...
You should just give the money back and
No, you mean it would be in the public interest if that had happened?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
So she's claiming that someone said that, you know, give some of this back and we won't investigate your operations. I actually think that would be a reasonable conclusion rather than spending millions on lawyers as these things do. But look, you know...
It's going to be embarrassing for the civil servant, though, isn't it, and the government?
We were shown on Sunday that that the husband had made £60 million from a £200 million deal. Now, the normal margin is 5 to 10%. They made at least 30%.
Well, in emergency, maybe 20%.
That looks a lot like profiteering to some people.
To some people.
They obviously deny that.
But
I think what's extraordinary is that it shows her greed. That 60 million quid will have not tangibly improved their lives, but it's ruined their reputation. You know, these people are just greedy.
OK, all right, obviously she denies any wrongdoing to an extent. I think it's hard to keep up these days, isn't it? But basically she denies anything bad. Now, Hump Day took on a whole new meaning today after a camel was spotted being escorted down a residential street in Chingford, East London.
It's near me.
Here it is.
Nah, I'm seeing too much weird stuff today. What is going on? What is going on?
See, I told you it's a camel.
Oh, and it's emerged now that Keir Starmer's going to defend that woman. Now, it's since been revealed that the camel and its owner were on their way to a Christmas procession run by a local church on Saturday. I'm sorry, I don't think that clears it up at all. Why the heck was a Christmas procession at a local church involving a camel? Anyway,
well, camels,
whatever.
nativity, they're a fundamental part of Christmas, camels.
But
Camels.
Patrick, why did the camel cross the road?
Oh, here we go. Go on.
Because there's no chickens in the desert.
Right. Not great.
Go on, laugh, everybody. Humour
Have
him.
we got some canned laughter, Jesus?
Humour him.
End up on headlines.
Right, it's time now to reveal today's greatest Britain and
heavens.
Union jackass. OK, Christine, who's your greatest Britain?
Right, my greatest Britain is the British Museum, because they have accepted £50 million from BP, other woke organisations. Look, stop giggling. This is a serious commendation for the British Museum. Places like the Royal Opera House and the National Portrait Gallery, they just come back to the taxpayer with their begging bowl. British Museum have said, no, we're going to take the money from BP. They had the guts to go ahead, and goodness knows they'll get Just Stop Oil chucking stuff all over them. So good for them.
OK, Adam, who's your greatest Britain?
Mine is a good friend of mine and a hero, really, up north. His name's Sacha Lord. He's the Night Times Arthur Manchester. He footed the bill for hundreds of people's fish and chips at the weekend to support hospitality. He does this quite a lot. I mean, he backs up. I tweet a lot for hospitality. This man backs up with action, and he is a hero.
Yeah, OK, fair enough. I used to go to the Warehouse Project quite a bit as well, and anything around that. Benjamin?
My greatest Britain is Stephen Fry, who is to do the alternative Christmas message on Channel 4, and he's doing it about anti-Semitism. He has sort of come out as a Jew, in his own words, and lots of people have shown exactly why we need him to talk about anti-Semitism, because the attacks he's had simply for speaking up about the racism Jewish people are facing in hordes at the moment.
Yep. No, absolutely. Today's Writers' Britain is the British Museum.
Oh,
so there we go. Fantastic. Well done, British Museum, although they're about to cop it, no doubt, from just
Did they steal the title like everything inside the museum?
Right, OK.
Stop it.
Who's your Union Jackass, Christine?
My Union Jackass, well, this is not difficult, is it? It's the junior doctors, for heaven's sake. What they're doing over this Christmas period is grotesque.
OK.
Do I have to explain more?
Not really, no. Go on, Adam.
Mine is the Welsh Government for hiking business rates for pubs and retail and hospitality. This is going to put a lot of jobs and a lot of businesses, especially pubs, out of business. It's criminal, really.
Yeah, OK, all right. Go on, Benjamin. Who's
mine is Peter Bone, the outgoing MP, most likely, who complained about the petition of constituents who voted to have a by-election in his constituency after he was accused of all sorts of sexual misconduct. I think he's shown absolutely no dignity in public office.
Obviously, he denies all allegations. Right, today's Union Jackass, I've doubled Christine.
Oh,
junior doctors,
good.
yes, that's right. OK, close run thing with the Welsh Government over the pubs and hospitality, though, I must say. Look, can I just say a massive, great big thank you to my wonderful panel, Christine,
Pleasure.
Adam, and, of course, Benjamin as well, even though you told that horrendous joke at the end. I must say, it completely failed me. I would just like to thank all of you wonderful people at home or listening in your radio as well. Please do go back and re-watch things on YouTube if you've missed any of it. We took a deep dive into the junior doctors' strike. We had quite a close look as well at Keir Starmer's record as a lawyer. We also teased ahead a little bit to something I think is, well, it is going to absolutely explode in the new year, so watch this space, about Jeffrey Epstein's little black book being revealed. Headliners is up next. They are going to do it in their own inimitable way, as only they possibly can, to take you through in even more detail tomorrow's headlines. Tonight, I will see you tomorrow at 9.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. Thursday is going to be a very blustery day for the UK, with a wind warning in force for a large swathe of the UK. That's as Storm Pia, named by the Danish Met Service, will sweep this frontal system across the UK. The strongest winds are expected to be into the North Sea, but we will see some very gusty winds across the bulk of northern areas of the UK. Before then, though, we'll see a lot of cloud around through the rest of the night. Persistent drizzly rain across northern and western areas. That rain will give way to blustery showers across the north of Scotland by tomorrow morning, and at this point the winds really strengthen.